Welcome to Box Out Banter. I'm Chris Okamura. Joining me as always, Mr. Jordan Christmas. Jordan, we have playoff basketball.
Great weekend of game ones. It was fantastic. It was fantastic hearing crowds again. It was, the bubble experience. It was interesting and it was nice, but just watching this weekend of games alone, especially with the type of games that we had, it's just so much better with the crowd back and just the intensity levels up, the energy's up. Trae Young's telling the entire Madison Square Garden crowd that it's quiet in here. It's great. And the young stars are showing out, by the way. The young players, Devin Booker, Trae Young, Julius Randle kind of, did not play well at all, but I expect him to bounce back. It's just all kinds of interesting series, and, obviously we're going to talk about them, but it's just great to have playoff basketball back in a semi-normal setting.
Yeah, so before we get into playoff stuff, the play-in.
Oh, yeah, the play-ins. That also happened. Also great.
Yes, absolutely. LeBron seeing 3 rims, shooting at the middle one.
Oh, my God.
So I think we can both agree that the West was better than the East. The East were kind of blowouts and not better.
Yeah, so much for our Hornets picks.
Yeah, I was pretty disappointed in that one. But you know what? Hey, the Celtics came out and surprised me.
They did. Jason Tatum, that man's special.
Yeah, so I was very surprised at the Celtics coming in. I still don't think they're going to do anything.
Oh, no. They're going to get trounced by Brooklyn.
Yeah. They started out hot, but then Brooklyn was like, oh, yeah, we're Brooklyn.
Yeah.
We're the Nets. And then
they're just like, oh, yeah, we're the big 3.
Yeah, and then they just kind of went off. But the West playing, very exciting.
Yes.
Obviously, Lakers Warriors was kind of like the poster child of why the plan works. And then surprising. How surprised were you about the Grizzlies?
I wasn't that surprised that the Grizzlies were the 8th seed, actually. So I figured they had a legitimate shot, considering that, the Warriors roster, while it's been better and while Steve Kerr cut his rotation down to 8 or 9 guys towards the last 20 games of the season, and they ended up having a net rating, I think, of plus 11 the last 20 games of the season, which is the marking of a good team. The Warriors roster is not as deep as the Grizzlies. The Grizzlies have a lot of good young players. A lot of players that were honestly basically draft crushes of mine and every NBA Twitter nerd scout.
I'm a big Jaren Jackson Jr. guy, and I'm a big Brandon Clark guy.
There's Desmond Bane, DeAnthony Melton, who I thought the Suns should have kept. Dylan Brooks, who is built like a fucking linebacker and plays like it on both ends of the floor. Of course, you got the star power of Ja Morant. I was actually watching the play-in game with some of my friends over Discord. I had the stream going. And they were asking me, they were just like, oh, Jordan, so what do you think of, do you think, your boy Steph is going to advance? And I was like, I don't know, man. Like, the Warriors just played like 48 hours ago. The Grizzlies, they're young, they're hungry, they're looking to, prove that they can make it to the playoffs after getting bounced by the Blazers in the play-in in the bubble. Like, I thought they had a legit shot. And Ja Morant we got to see playoff Ja Morant, or play-in Ja Morant, but yesterday we got to see playoff Ja Morant. The Warriors had the better player, 2 top-end players in Steph and Draymond, but the Warriors' depth just played out. Jonas Valanciunas and Jaren Jackson Jr. got in foul trouble, and then, Tillman comes in right off the bench and is immediately just getting dirty in the paint, getting offensive rebounds, getting putbacks, hitting key corner threes. Grayson Allen was hitting key corner threes, and Grayson Allen has been really good as a starter this year as well. Like, the Grizzlies just have a plethora of young, talented players. And I'm not surprised, honestly, that they beat the Warriors. I am surprised that, I guess I am I am a little bit surprised that we don't get to see Steph, in the playoffs. But the Warrior credit to the Grizzlies. They did great, and John Morant showed out, man.
Yeah, so I guess we can get into our first actual segment here, talking about the Grizzlies, and leading into the thing that probably we both want to talk about the most.
Oh yes, fire up that Jazz pack.
So the Grizzlies beat the Jazz yesterday.
Yes, they did.
Yesterday?
Yeah, it was last night.
After watching the game, the score does not tell how badly the Grizzlies beat the shit out of the Jazz.
Yeah, you're right.
They almost gave that game away.
Yeah, like young teams typically, that's never been there before, will most likely do. They'll relinquish the lead for sure.
So, how do you feel about after what you saw in that game? How do you feel?
The Jazz are screwed without Donovan Mitchell. I mean, yeah. Hot take, I know, but there was that whole weird thing yesterday. I don't know if you were reading reports today from Brian Windhorst and Tim McMahon of ESPN, but there was some confusion about Mitchell's availability yesterday. He had been out since April with that ankle injury against Indiana in that weird random Saturday game that was like at 11 a.m. That literally took all of NBA Twitter by surprise. They're like, wait, there's a game right now? Like, but ever since that bad ankle sprain, Mitchell's been out, and so there's apparently, Mitchell has his personal trainers, and then the Jazz obviously have their own medical staff. The Jazz medical staff didn't clear him, and Mitchell got pissed off. Teammates were kind of blindsided. I thought he was going to play, honestly. Everybody thought he was going to play, but he didn't play, and the Jazz had a tough time. The Jazz missed a lot of good looks. Also, Rudy Gobert got into foul trouble because Jonas Valanciunas is a goddamn bear. Like, if there was a player that looked like the logo of the team that he plays on, I would say Jonas Valanciunas is an actual Grizzly in the paint. And he got Gobert, in foul trouble a little bit, so that limited the Jazz effectiveness on the defensive end. Morant was, especially in the fourth quarter, was slicing through the defense. Dillon Brooks has been great so far since the play-in game against San Antonio. And then against the Warriors, and then here, I just think the Jazz, they need Mitchell gives the Jazz that dash of that firepower, but not just the firepower, that dash of offensive versatility that perfectly mixes with what the Jazz's shot profile and offensive style is. Because now you're looking at it, the Jazz are attempting a bunch of threes. You're asking Bojan Bogdanovic to consistently beat his man off the dribble and get into the paint, which is something he could do for like a game or two. But it's the complement of the players that surround Mitchell and Gobert is what makes the Jazz go. It's what makes their four guys that can dribble, pass and shoot more effective, because Mitchell is the more explosive one out of all of them. You're relying on Jordan Clarkson a little bit too much at that point. It's I think the Jazz without Mitchell, they're the number one seed. They should beat the Grizzlies with even without Mitchell, but it's a lot tougher now. And I imagine this would be a tough 6 or 7 gamer now, as opposed to if Mitchell was playing, I probably would have picked the Jazz in 5 or 6. But the Grizzlies are tough, man. I'm glad we got the Grizzlies in the playoffs. I know people want to see Steph, and I'm certainly not one to, disparage that notion, because I want to see Steph. But the Grizzlies are just a fun basketball team, just a fun one. So yeah. It was a good win for the Jazz, and light up that Jazz pack, because they're in trouble without Mitchell.
So he's gonna play game 2. We know that.
Yep. Shams Charania reported it.
The question becomes, is he ready to play? Or do they feel the pressure? Yes. And I don't know if I can answer that. And again, I think you're with me. We're not the biggest Donovan Mitchell fans to begin with. I'm a
little bit more of a Donovan Mitchell fan than you are.
Yeah. So I just don't know. Again, the pieces are strong, or the some of its parts stronger than the pieces. So I don't know if adding him back into the mix is gonna kind of stabilize them again, like you're bringing up. My thing is there's a lot of holes defensively. There's a lot of things that were going on, not just offensively but defensively, that the Grizzlies were giving them fits, and like I don't know. Having Valanciunas, yes, but having like Jaren Jackson back out there, it really kind of exposes Rudy Gobert's lack of mobility when they're pulling him away from the basket. And again, I know he's long, and I know how talented of a defender he is. But again, I think there is a limit to a defense that is predicated around getting guys to go to the basket like that.
Yeah.
So we're both just kind of anti-Jazz at this point.
In terms of the hierarchy of the West, I do think the Jazz are a little bit of a paper tiger. I do not think they'll come out of the West. I think they're a really good team. And I like how they've evolved over the years because of the continuity and stuff. But we're talking about playoff teams, right? Like we're talking about teams that are the top 8, top 16 teams in the league. So again, we're not saying that the Jazz are terrible, but we're just saying, like, in terms of compared to the rest of the field here, I don't know. I don't think they're contenders. I think it wouldn't surprise me if they lost this series to the Grizzlies. I would be kind of surprised. Because I do think the Grizzlies have their own holes as well.
Sure. I think there is something to be said though for the young.
Yeah,
kind
of course. And they're in.
I don't know what I'm doing.
Holes.
The young confidence.
Yeah, for sure. There's that ignorance is bliss type of thing going on with the Grizzlies. They know they're not the favorites in this series, so they're playing with house money a little bit too. I do think eventually we're going to see the Jazz adjust when they play that John Morant pick and roll. I think they're just going to start dropping under hard. There are some adjustments the Jazz can make, but you're right. A defense that is basically predicated around their only like elite wing defender is Royce O'Neal. Then they have a bunch of average defenders. The whole thing of forcing everything and funneling everything to Rudy Gobert, that's going to be a lot tougher considering that the Grizzlies do have shooting. They have an athletic freak of a point guard in John Morant. And, if the Grizzlies miss a bunch of shots, Jonas Valanciunas is down there with, he's basically built like a brick house. He can just move people out of the way. You saw, I think, what more than anything yesterday, I think what we saw, it wasn't so much Rudy Gobert was being pulled out of the paint by Jaren Jackson. He was covering Valanciunas most of the night. Rudy Gobert would not leave Valanciunas to cover the Grizzlies' drives because, we've seen it all year with Valanciunas. He is a bear on the offensive glass. And he's just an old school, just knock your ass around the paint type of player. And so Rudy Gobert wouldn't leave him. And so that opened up a few more driving lanes for the Grizzlies. So there's definitely some adjustments to be made, but I would be a little bit surprised if the Grizzlies ended up winning. It'd be great for the brand of this podcast, but I would definitely be surprised if the Grizzlies won. But don't think the Jazz are coming out of the West anyway.
No. So that does kind of bring the rest of the West here, where I know we brought up. I don't know if you want to head Lakers Suns, if you want to head Clippers Mavs.
I actually want to hit Bucks Heat because I have the game actually. Sorry, I know we're doing a quick audible here, but
sure.
I just wanted to bring up Bucks Heat because I think the Bucks are going to trounce the Heat now that they got the proverbial monkey off their back. Yeah, I got the game on in the background right now. The Bucks are just running over the Heat right now. Early in the first quarter. That game one. I don't know about you, and maybe you can answer this, but that game felt like more than a game one of a first round playoff series to me.
It felt like a tone setter.
That felt like what?
A tone setter.
Yeah, it felt like a tone setter, but it was it felt like it's ridiculous to say that a game one of a first round series is a fork in the road game, but I really do think if the Bucks lost that game, I really don't know if they could. I don't know if I would say they would lose that series. They're just in a dogfight for the rest of that series. That set the tone. They were able to get a few, like Mike Budenholzer. You know, oh man, I was Bucks Twitter and me were screaming at Mike Budenholzer the whole game. You know, there were stretches of the game where Bud would take Brook Lopez and Dante DiVincenzo off the floor, and he would put in PJ Tucker and Bryn Forbes. And what do you know? When you put good, effective players that fit together, when there's 5 good players on the court at the same time, it's amazing what could happen. Like, you know, gaining an 8-point lead. But then he closes with Brook and Dante DiVincenzo. There were some Pat Connaughton minutes in there, and I am surprised we got to see Pat Connaughton actually get some playing time. But Bud hasn't gone, you know, to his best lineups, and they were very content on going under screens instead of switching on the Duncan Robinson dribble handoffs, and Robinson got to go off. And if you let a shooter go off like that, I don't care if that's your game plan. Like, that's not a recipe for success, and they almost lost because of it. But now that they've won that game, I really do think the Bucks are going to trounce the Heat now. Giannis still being put in different spots on the floor more than ever than he was in that Heat series last year. And like I said on the last podcast, Drew fucking Holiday is not Eric Bledsoe. He made so many key plays in game 1. So many key plays. He could go he had 20, 11 rebounds, 5 assists. He did go 0 for 5 from 3, but he was a plus 10 in that game. And he was spectacular. I thought his defense was great. I thought when PJ Tucker was in, he played great defense. He was part of the reason why they played great defense on Jimmy Butler. Giannis actually guarded Jimmy a lot. Bam and Jimmy were like a combined 4 for 1,000 in game 1. And maybe low key, Jimmy Butler's shooting problems might come back to bite the Heat in the ass soon. But I think the wheels are off now. I think the Bucks are going to beat the crap out of Miami because I don't think they're as deep as last year, and they don't have the personnel to do the wall as effectively. And even if they do the wall, they have Chris Middleton, and you know, I didn't even bring up Chris Middleton, who hit the game-winning shot in, you know, the second overtime. He was slow in the first half, but in the second half, he bounced right back, hit the game-winning shot in the first overtime. Or and there was only one overtime, but I thought it was going to go to double OT the way it was going. But the Bucks were awesome, and they're a different team. So I'm looking forward to seeing what happens through the rest of the series because I think they should trounce the Heat.
Of trounce, I think that was a huge game just mentally for the Bucks. Yeah,
that's where I was getting at. Is a mental roadblock.
I think that was a huge win for them. I think for me, I don't know if I necessarily believe that they're going to trounce them. I think that the series is still incredibly close. I don't think the Heat played their best either. So, you know, obviously, I don't as good a defense as the Bucks played on Jimmy and Bam. I don't expect them to perform that way the entire time. Like, it kind of comes back to the AD thing to me of like, I don't expect Anthony Davis to have a game like that in the entire series. Like, to me, these are kind of low points. And like, I think that when you talk about players to the caliber of Jimmy Butler and Bam Adebayo, I think that you're talking about players that know how to bounce back and know how to make adjustments as well. And so, we're going to see the adjustments from the Bucks and tune things up. But I also, as we talked about before, I think I trust Coach Spoelstra more than I do Bud to make adjustments. Sure. And I think that like we're just going to see a back and forth. And I think this series is going to be as much a dogfight as last year's was. And then
I picked Bucks in 5. I just think they were way more talented than the Heat are. I know they have the coaching advantage for sure, but even if Jimmy and Butler, God damn it, even if Jimmy and Bam do bounce back, Trevor Ariza was playing 38 minutes. Like, Goran Dragic, he had one great game yesterday, but he hasn't been good all year. Is a year older. Like
He's been
I
hurt,
just
though,
see,
to be
I see.
fair.
Well, yeah, last year he was, but I just think this Heat team is just not as good, and I kind of had this theory last year that the bubble kind of helped them out a little bit. Also,
the shooting definitely helped with Hero and
yeah,
and Duncan.
You might see like a close. You're probably where I picked the Bucks in 5. I think you might see a close game in another close game in one of the games in Miami. But I think the Bucks are they're overwhelmingly talented. They should beat. If this goes past 6, then I will not be scared of the Bucks if they come to the Sixers in the Eastern Conference Finals. I think it'll be. Maybe not scared is the wrong phrase, but I will definitely think less of them. But we'll see.
Yeah, we'll see. I think this is by far the most interesting matchup still.
Yeah, definitely
in this opening round.
But yeah, let's bounce back to the Lakers and Suns.
Yeah,
and your boy A Disney.
So AD had a terrible game, and he took. I'm glad he took responsibility for it. Because it's something. It says a lot about. It was so weird because there has to be something going on mentally with him from the injuries. Because I don't know if you watched it close. He was hesitating to drive to the basket, but he was also not shooting threes. So he was stuck in this weird middle. He's been ever since he got back. The only game that he really bounced back on was that game against Phoenix, where he was actually attacking. He seemed angry and he was attacking the basket, and he was doing AD things. Now he's really starting to settle for this mid-range jumper that isn't falling, and it's been a go-to for him. But it's even more so now where he's relying on it for every little bit of offense, and he's just not going to the basket. I'm not entirely sure why, if it's an injury thing or a mental thing. But I would expect him to bounce back in this second game, because that right before he had that Phoenix game before, he had a poor shooting performance in the game prior. So he's always been pretty good at bouncing back. So I would assume for the second game to be better. But there is no doubt in my mind that the Lakers are going to win this series now, as cocky as that sounds. That even after watching how poorly the Lakers played and watching how lethargic and sort of like disinterested they seemed, and the fact that we played a ton of DeAndre Ayton, or sorry, not DeAndre Ayton, of Andre Drummond, and no Marc Gasol. Again, I trust at this point. I'm in trust in Vogel mode, because this is what happened during last year in the bubble as well, where we lost game 1. We actually got our ass kicked game 1 of each series, and then came back and swept the rest of them. So again, I'm cautious, but I'm also optimistic.
LeBron series, after losing game 1, like they actually, I think I saw the stat, they win like 60% of the time or something like that, LeBron teams or whatever. But the Suns aren't a pushover, man. Like they first of all, I'm just going to go to the Suns side real quick. DeAndre Ayton played great defense on Anthony Davis.
Absolutely.
Yesterday.
He played great.
He was spectacular. And if you're a DeAndre Ayton believer, if you're a listener and you're a DeAndre Ayton believer, like I was, or I still am, I don't know why I said was, it was past tense. But if you're still a DeAndre Ayton believer, this was a great game, a great debut. He was rolling hard to the basket. He was catching everything. He was getting offensive rebounds. He was playing great defense on Anthony Davis, and he was just being a big target down there, and you felt his presence the entire game. Guys like Mikal Bridges, Jay Crowder, like they didn't even have like good shooting games, but they were still very important with their defense. And, the Chris Paul's shoulder injury, that's going to be a subplot throughout this series, but he was basically slingshotting the ball in at the end. Which was, not good, but hopefully he can, hopefully that shoulder feels a little bit better. But as far as Anthony Davis goes, one, obviously, I mean, you brought it up before, but Vogel needs to, go to the Anthony Davis at 5 lineup sooner. Andre Drummond is just, he's not it, man. Like, I'm sorry. Like, I know like he had some decent plays yesterday, and maybe we're at this point, it's like, once you're memeified as a player, you're not going to get out of it. They're like, your people are always going to come at you and criticize you from a negative bias or slant, but he's just not an effective player in winning games over the course of a game. Like I'm surprised like he played 20 minutes yesterday. Like he got lost on defense so many times. Well, actually the entire Lakers team, I think there were possessions where they just weren't urgent. Like there was that one possession where they were just jogging back. Everybody had their head turned and Booker just, snuck by them, and they were able to get a Booker dunk in full court, basically semi-transition. LeBron didn't look like he had that much lift in his, step yesterday. It was a poor showing all around. And I think this series is important for Anthony Davis because there were some interesting stats about, his mid-range jumper and his long twos and how he was shooting otherworldly in the bubble. He was shooting like 50% on long twos, and that was a lot of his shot diet in the bubble. But outside of the playoffs, it was like his first playoffs, it was like 29%, and then his next playoffs it was 30%, and then at the bubble it was 50%. So I'm wondering if we're going to see, a similar dip now that we're out of the bubble, and also the lineups where Anthony Davis plays and LeBron doesn't, he's got to show that he could start winning those lineups more often. Yeah. There's been stats over the last few years, obviously, and when you watch the games, like this is why I've always contended, while I've been a big Anthony Davis fan, I am not as high as him as other people are as a tier 1 franchise player. I think you can build a winning team around him. I think it's possible if things break right, you can win a championship with him as the best player. But he settles, I think, too much for the mid-range. And he, like you said yesterday, he wasn't attacking the rim like he normally does. And that might be an injury thing because like the Achilles is nothing to mess with. But I just want to see him finally start, winning lineups and looking at LeBron like, hey, we're equals, and I just wasn't high on Davis in that regard. Like he's a game changer defensively, offensively, he's supremely talented, but I want to see. What? I'm sorry.
To me, it's always a mental thing. He has the tools and he shows them in flashes, but he just doesn't do them all the time.
Yeah, like I want to see that this series because if he doesn't show up, the Lakers are going to lose this series like flat out, full stop. Especially with LeBron not showing as much pop.
Yeah, the thing that I do want to bring up too, and I don't want to put this all on AD. Dennis Schroeder.
Oh yeah,
he wants $100 million. He wants $100 million, and he's not going to get
it. No way, he's not. Like, is he gonna sign a $100 million contract with like an esports team or something? Because he's definitely not getting it in the NBA.
It is crazy to me, and you can tell he's trying to prove himself because there's stretches where he just goes on like a dribbling tear, and you're like, dude, you need to look.
Yeah,
and, like he does the young player thing, which is concerning for a player of his age and of his experience level. He does the young player thing where he tries to make up for the play before.
Yeah.
And you're like, dude, you like next play, like don't worry about what just happened. And he was
terrible in the Warriors playing game.
Oh my god, I've never
flat out terrible.
And it's the thing. It's this is the concerning thing, and I've seen a lot of people bring this up, and it's slightly concerning. When you look at our best lineups, when you look at the Lakers' best lineups, it is LeBron AD, obviously. Then it's Caruso, KCP, and then probably Wes and Kuzma, depending on who's playing better that day.
Yeah.
So it really is the 5 guys we had from last year, and this is after we sign Montrezl Harrell and Dennis Schroeder and Marc Gasol. And like we're supposed to have this deep team, but we're just defaulting back to our main guys, which is fine. But it is concerning that these guys that we signed, these guys that we brought in as upgrades, and that everyone saw as upgrades, are becoming irrelevant the deeper and deeper we go. And like again, there is a little bit of reprise. I don't want to say like they're a waste of money or whatever, because I don't think we would have gotten through the regular season the way we did without them.
Right.
Because like Montrez and Dennis Schroeder were extremely important in us riding the ship while LeBron and AD were out. Like I don't think we win the same amount of games that we do without LeBron AD with last year's team. But at the same time, it is concerning that I don't know who steps up from our bench when push comes to shove here, and it does put a lot on LeBron and AD, who are still trying to, they clearly are still trying to come back from injury because they don't look 100%.
Yeah. I mean, that was kind of one of the questions going into the season, right? When you guys signed all those guys, because it was like Harrell got exposed in the playoffs on the defensive end a little bit, and you just wonder how many minutes he was going to get. He only got 14, and he was effective in those minutes, but not somebody you want to close with. Andre Drummond, I just think is a non-starter. I really think I know it's Coach Vogel. I know he's won a championship already, so we really can't, not question him, but I do think we can criticize him. I just think not playing Marc Gasol and playing Andre Drummond instead is malpractice. I just think Marc Gasol is the better offensive player and the better defensive player, just flat out. I mean, I don't care about, you can miss me with the points per game and the double-digit rebounding. I mean, whatever. Marc Gasol is clearly, he's smarter. He's a communicator on defense, and then on offense, he's a great passer. Him and LeBron always had that, that when Marc Gasol's on the elbow, he catches LeBron on that backdoor. It's been a long time since we've seen that because he hardly plays now. Maybe give Ben McLemore a shot. Maybe. I mean, he not with the Lakers, but he kind of revitalized himself in Houston. I mean, let's say KCP goes 2 for 9 again, and or something like that, or Schroeder doesn't play well again. Maybe give Ben McLemore a shot. But I think at the end of the day, it's just LeBron and Anthony Davis. And it sounds like an excuse, but it's true. Like, if you watched LeBron yesterday, Mikal Bridges, I love Mikal Bridges, stellar defender. He's a great elite defender. He'll put dudes in jail. LeBron has 50 pounds on him, and you could see LeBron would relish that type of matchup, and he would just bury Bridges under the basket. And usually with a guy with Bridges' build will just get buried under the basket. That wasn't happening yesterday. And Bridges blocked LeBron on the block once. LeBron drove to the rim a few times and was met with resistance and was turned away. They just don't look right now. But I think overall they just played bad, and Anthony Davis needs to play better, just flat out.
Yeah. They need to play better. I'm not. This game to me showed that we're gonna win the series, and if we don't deserve to, right? It's a thing, and I know it's weird to say. It's a thing of cool if we win. To me, we're gonna win the series. I don't even think it's. I think we're gonna turn it on. I think we're gonna be fine. And the thing is, if we don't turn it on and we're not trying, then fuck it. There's no reason to even continue going with this season. So to me, I think I don't think the Suns have a say on whether or not we're going to win or lose this series. That's kind of where I'm at.
And they kind of might. They're a good team, man. They are.
I know they're a
legit
team.
contender.
I think the Lakers want to win this series. They can win this series.
Yeah, I guess that's where I'm at too. I just think it would be more so. I'd probably give a little bit more credit to the Suns if they were to win this series.
I'm not. It's not like I'm anti-Suns. I've been on the Suns bandwagon this entire time. To me, it's just a thing of this is a terrible matchup for them. It is probably the worst matchup of any team in the playoffs for them. And it's just a matter of if the Lakers want to win the series, they can win the series. Because if AD plays, if they want to try, then they can win the series. I think the more interesting one to me, and we had this talk last week when we talked, the Mavericks and the Clippers. Yeah. Now, to me, I'm concerned just of the thing of there's a lot of all the talk about the Clippers having these perimeter defenders, and they cannot guard Luka.
Yeah, Luka is a top 5 player. Like he, like flat out, it's like we're like 7 games into Luka versus the Clippers in the playoffs, and they cannot stop him. Like they don't have an answer for Luka.
And even last year, if he wasn't hurt, he probably would have torched him more.
Yeah, and he's incredible, man. Like the if you double team him, he's going to pick you apart. Like there are only or if you single cover him, he's going to step you back and hit a 3. He randomly out of nowhere, Luka has become also a more calculated post player and a calculated mid-range scorer, which is just scary to think about. This guy's 22 years old, man. Like the sky's the limit for this guy. And the fact that, I don't know more so. I think the Clippers actually didn't put Kawhi or Paul George on Luka enough. You saw Patrick Beverley on him a lot. You saw that clip that was circling around on the internet where Luka was told Pat Bev that he's too fucking small. Yeah. And if you put your point guard on Luka, that's death. If you try to trap him out at, beyond the 3-point line, that's death. Like there were only 2 or 3 times yesterday where I saw Luka was kind of shook by the coverage that he got. Not shook, he just didn't know what to do. And that was it. Like he had an answer for everything. Now, I will say the Clippers missed a lot of good looks from 3 on offense. Paul George stunk it up in the first half, but then, was stellar in the second half. Kawhi, we might have to see Kawhi reach back in his bag and pull out, prime defensive player of the year caliber Kawhi Leonard for this one. Might have to step back on offense a little bit, but they're going to need to have to put one of those 2 guys on Luka for a lot of the game. But I thought actually the Clippers missed
that though. That's kind of what we brought up, and that's kind of the questions I've had with the Clippers all year. Is yes, Kawhi can handle a lot of your offense and be your main offensive weapon, but he is not the same player defensively that he was when he does that,
and he's not.
And at the end of games, if he's playing a lot of minutes, at the end of games, you can really see that he takes a step back on both ends.
Yeah, like his lift goes away.
Yeah, and it's not like it's a little, like it's very noticeable.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know what you do if you're the Clippers.
But also on the Mavericks flip side of things, they shot 17 of 36 from 3.
You're not gonna get that from Dorian Finney-Smith.
Yeah, Dorian Finney-Smith had 18 points and was 4 for 5 from 3. Tim Hardaway Jr. He definitely had a Tim Hardaway Jr. game. But I just don't expect the Mavericks to go 17 of 36 from 3 again. But Luka's so incredible that maybe not to do the whole Bill Simmons historian correlation type thing, but it is true, great players, all-time great players, they get on a trajectory in their young age faster than anybody else. So maybe this might be the series where Luka wins the series by himself and it's unexpected. We have this linear path for players sometimes or whatever. Maybe this is the series where Luka just wins a series and we don't expect it, much like how LeBron kind of went to the finals in 2007 and we didn't expect it, type thing. Not that to say the Mavs are going to the finals or anything, but all-time great players, they win their first series sooner than expected, and they're basically an automatic, they win the first round every time. After that, they go to the playoffs. And we might be seeing that with Luka. I mean, he picked the Clippers apart yesterday. And he wasn't even like a good scorer in the fourth quarter. He was just picking people apart. And that's where my question about the Mavericks lie, is their clutch time scoring. And Luka is, he's obviously clutch, but the Mavericks clutch numbers this year have been not good. And I think part of it is like the ball just is in Luka's hands so much, and he has to outlet it to a bunch of shooters and stuff. And I just don't know if the role players can replicate that. And Kristaps Porzingis, 4 of 13, but I think he was used more as a spacer than more than anything, because Kawhi kind of started off on him a little bit. But maybe you can get Kristaps going more.
I'm still a huge fan of the Kristaps post up, but I like him in the post a lot.
Yeah, it diversifies, it kind of diversifies the spots on the floor and where the defense knows where the shots are coming from. It kind of throws them off a little bit more.
Yeah.
But that's going to be an interesting series, man. Like that series.
Man.
Well, I thought the Clippers would win in 6. I thought this was going to be a 6-game series. I just don't. I mean, we might. Who knows? I might be wrong. We might see Luka just beat the Clippers by himself, and that would be wild. He would elevate on it in everybody's top player rankings.
There's definitely a chip on the shoulder. I'm almost certain that the Mavericks feel like if they were healthy, they would have beat the Clippers in the bubble. And so there's a little bit of that coming in. There's a little bit of the chip on your shoulder coming in that way, and I think the Mavericks just they see the opportunity here to make a statement, and I think they want to make it, and I think it's they
possible. Can. It's possible for sure. And we'll see if the Clippers can knock down some.
And this thing I want to bring up too. Fourth quarter, when they got down by like 6 or 7, the body language was just like the bubble. Nothing changed.
Oh yeah, when they got down like 7 or 9 with like 3 minutes left.
Yeah, like 3 minutes left. That's a lot of time, and it's only 7 points. And they didn't want to play anymore.
And it looked like, I think it was towards the end of that game with like, cause there was still like they could still play the foul game, and they just didn't. Mm-hmm. It's not great. It's not great, Bob.
Yeah, like Again, I know we probably put too much into body language and stuff like that, but they did not want to play anymore, and you could tell that they were just like, fuck this.
They were just like, all right, we'll go to the next game. Yeah, there's a lot of pressure on this Clippers team, man. It'll be interesting to see what happens if they got bounced in the first round. That Steve Ballmer with his crazy ass would definitely shake things up for sure if that were to happen. But it's crazy to say that the Mavericks have the best player in this series. I think I am comfortable saying that now.
Yeah.
Especially because look, that Kawhi's run to the finals was amazing, and it was cute that there was that little month or 2 month period where everybody was saying that he was the best player in the world. Even though before that it was Kevin Durant.
We say how much everyone overreacted to Kawhi winning a championship in Toronto.
Yeah. Even though he was 4 bounces away from maybe going the other way home. Or if the Bucks didn't choke in game 3 of that Eastern Conference Finals, they could have went up 3-0 on the Raptors. Like, there are so many breaking points where the narrative just changes like that. But before that, before Kevin Durant's initial calf injury, he was the best. He was playing like the best player in the world, flat out. And so then we all kind of just moved to Kawhi.
Well, and then
these last 2 years, man, LeBron, he's still a top 7 player. But
remember, LeBron last year too, before the bubble happened, was literally playing the best basketball I think in like the last 4 or 5 years.
Yeah, last year's LeBron was my favorite LeBron.
Oh my God.
Not the best, but it was my favorite LeBron.
Yeah, he was playing absolutely insane.
Yeah, but the Mavericks might have the best. I think they do have the best player in this series, actually. Yes. I'm not gonna hedge it. Like, Luka Doncic is the best player in this series. Kawhi's just not the same defensively. He hasn't really been. Just lately, he hasn't even coming back from the injury and joining before the season ended. Like he just hasn't been that efficient either. Like he's still a tier 1 guy to me, but Luka's special, man. Like I know it's obvious. I cannot believe the Kings passed on this guy. I got robbed of seeing Luka in Sacramento.
So Jordan, big question for you here. If the Clippers lose here, if they get embarrassed by the Mavericks, does Kawhi opt out and leave?
No, I think he stays.
You think so?
Yeah. It's LA, it's his home. I'm sure he'll figure out things with Steve Ballmer, but I think Kawhi's been wanting to stay. I mean, even going back to San Antonio where he wanted out. He wanted to go to LA. That was pretty clear. So yeah, I think he would stay. Kawhi's also. I don't think he's the type that would switch teams that much. He seems kind of low key in that way.
Yeah, so we'll see.
What do you think?
I'm on the fence. I don't think he cares about championships. I don't think he cares about. I think he just wants to be where he wants to be and like being able to be successful and like the Clippers are a good enough team to be successful. I don't know. He's such a weird dude to like kind of try to predict. And that's what kind of gives me pause of like, yeah, we can think that he's like this, but we don't really know.
I think he cares about championships. I just think that this Clippers team down the road isn't going to be a contender since they gave up 10,000 draft picks to make this duo work.
Yeah, and like they give 10,000 draft picks to do a work, but it's not a good duo. Like, well, not good. Like they just haven't been great.
They haven't been together. Is the main thing. Like even at the beginning of this season when they were playing together a little bit more, like by the middle of the season they both just started missing games because of injuries. Once again, like just not seeing the court together all the time. I think that's been the one big failure of this duo is just not having that continuity together. I think Doc Rivers actually in a Sixers presser a few weeks ago said that Paul George and Kawhi only practiced together last season one time, which is wild to think about. Like your two star players, like not practicing together. And yeah, they had training camp together this year and stuff. But again, the last 30 or 40 games, players have been in and out of the lineup. The duo wasn't playing together as much. And I think that's the one big failure more than anything when we look back at this, what the Clippers did here, when we, remove ourselves from it 10 years from now. I just think that's the biggest thing is that continuity. It matters.
Yes.
I do want to atone for the Blazers Nuggets series because I think the Nuggets are in huge trouble. And I know it's game one, and I don't want to overreact to game ones, but sure. If PJ Dozier doesn't get healthy and if Will Barton doesn't get healthy soon, Damian Lillard and CJ McCollum are just going to absolutely put these guards in a torture chamber for the Nuggets. And I like the Blazers strategy yesterday of basically letting Jokic be a scorer because obviously he's a great scorer. Jokic is shot 60% from two, like 39% from three, and like 86% from the line. But what makes him so deadly is his passing. And if you double Jokic, it's over. Like he already knows what's going to happen. I think the Blazers staying home on Jokic is an effective strategy. And on the other end, Damian Lillard and CJ McCollum and a little bit of Carmelo Anthony. Revenge series for Carmelo Anthony.
Carmelo was balling yesterday.
Yeah, or Saturday.
Yes, Saturday.
But you're like Melo was, he even hit like a vintage Melo, like the dude is in my face. I'm just gonna pull up right in his grill and hit a three. He even had one of those classic Melo shots that I would practice in the backyard because I was a huge Carmelo Denver Nugget fan. Like, yeah, the Carmelo for some reason, and rightfully so, I'd say that number 15 Nuggets jersey with the yellow pinstripes on the inside of the jersey. That's like a Hall of Fame jersey.
the navy
the
blue
light
one.
blue. Yeah, the navy blue one. That's a Hall of
Yeah.
Fame jersey. Like if you're just talking about attire and drip, like the Nuggets Mellow jersey is one of the best. But Lillard and McCollum just they took Campazzo, they took Monte Morris, who was just coming back from injury. They took all the Nuggets' tiny guards to the woodshed. Austin Rivers too, who was a late pickup towards the end of the season. He's now starting. This Murray injury hurts the Nuggets in a lot of ways, man. And I think I knew it was a big deal, but I kind of underestimated it because I kind of was just like, the Nuggets are going to win this series because I just think they have the best player on the court. But if the Blazers' defensive strategy on Jokic continues to be effective, then Damian Lillard can just, carry the Blazers past this first round series. And I'm pretty sure Yusuf Nurkic, who has been getting better as the season went along and towards the end of this season, I think he relishes this matchup against Jokic because Denver effectively chose Jokic over Nurkic, and that's why he got traded to Portland. And I know Nurkic relishes these type of matchups, and he was effective yesterday, 16 and 12 with 5 assists on 7 of 10 shooting. This Blazers team definitely has a legit shot at winning this series, especially if Dozier, who's a bigger 6'8", 6'7" type of wing, comes back, and if Will Barton is still hurt. The Nuggets are kind of in trouble here. I still think they'll win this series, but they kind of have to mix some things up and kind of get Jokic's passing going as well, because that's a big part of what the Nuggets do.
I think they just have to unlock their size more. I think they have to go more to the post-ups. I think they have to go more to the Michael Porter Jr., Aaron Gordon route of scoring, and just kind of bully their way around and use that size.
I think the Nuggets would be fine with having Michael Porter, or the Blazers would be fine having Michael Porter Jr. post up, though.
Yeah.
I don't think that's his game.
No, it's not. But I think just having that size advantage there, at least if him diving in the basket or cutting more, he's becoming too lenient on that spot up, which is fine. He's really good at it. But I think he's 6'9", 6'10". Like you gotta dive to the basket every once in a while. But and I think that giving that versatility to his game is going to be huge for him going forward, and being able to be that weapon that can be used in a lot of different ways. It's a lot of standing in the corner right now, and I think it makes it easy to defend him.
Yeah, and Michael Porter Jr., 1 of 10 from 3 in that game. I don't think he's going to shoot like that again. He's an elite shooter. I think he shot 43% this year. I'm really excited to see, by the way, just a side note, I'm really excited to see how Porter Jr. develops, because he was falling in that draft because of the back injury and stuff like that. It was just like, you just knew, it was like, man, whoever gets this guy, if they can get him healthy, like they they're going to have a steal on their hands, because that combination of size and shooting touch, and I think he's underrated in terms of IQ. On the offensive end, at least. He's getting better defensively, too. You could kind of see the improvements there in terms of like help and rotations and stuff like that. But he can't go 1 for 10 for 3 again. I don't think that's going to happen. I think Aaron Gordon needs... The scary thing is you're probably going to need Aaron Gordon, like you said, to do a little bit more. And I don't know if that might be a dicey proposition for the Nuggets. He would still be the third option, but, just in Orlando, he was tasked with being, the scorer and facilitator and stuff like that, and had a lot more on his role than, bit off a lot more in his role than he could probably chew. So that would be my worry. But the only avenues for the Nuggets to take advantage of their size is, like you said, it's Michael Porter Jr., but he really doesn't post up like that or use his size like that. Aaron Gordon, who can be effective at times, but do you want him doing it all the time? And then Jokic. They don't have Will Barton, like I mentioned. They don't have Dozier to kind of give Damon CJ a little bit of trouble on the perimeter just from his size and his length. It's just a lot of Austin Rivers and a lot of Facu Campazzo and a lot of Monte Morris backing them up. And I just don't know if they can guard those two guys. And then on top of that, you have Norman Powell, who shot 3 for 11, but I don't think he's going to shoot 3 for 11 again. If the Nuggets don't make some changes in game 2, then they're definitely in danger time for sure.
Yeah, totally agree.
So, what'd you think of that Knicks Hawks playoff series?
Oh my god.
Or playoff or game one,
So
I should say.
again, I'm not the biggest Trae Young guy, but he played really, really well. I think to me the last second shot was the layup was a parting of the Red Sea for some reason. I don't know what happened to the Knicks defense.
Mm.
I want to give a shout out to Bogdan for hitting some
playoff bogey
shots, some insanely clutch shots.
Oh yeah,
and really kind of bailing out the Hawks in a lot of ways in a lot of situations. So
playoff bogey. He was built for this. Like, I am glad to see Bogey get playoff minutes because with the Kings, you could just tell he was a super ultra competitor. He's played in big games like this overseas, by the way. So I don't think he was shook by the MSG crowd. But I'm glad that he's finally getting playoff reps. I go back and forth with Trae Young because I think this year he just wasn't fun to watch. I thought last year you could kind of see like the inklings of a guy who could score, and he's always been a great passer. But I think Nate McMillan has kind of organized the Hawks in a way that one has made Trae Young trust his teammates more, and also has made Trae Young a more efficient player. And he passed the first test of being a star. Like the guy was still averaging like over 25 points. I need to look up his stats exactly. But he's still a all-star caliber player, like with the numbers he puts up. And now it's finally translated to winning. And he finally had his, big playoff moment. And, it was a great playoff debut. I think he scored and assisted on the last 21 points of the fourth quarter for the Hawks. I picked the Hawk. I know I said on my might have sounded like last week on my podcast that I was leaning Knicks in this series, but I went with Hawks in 6 just because I think they are more talented than the Knicks are. The Knicks are more tough. They are definitely better defensively, but I just think the Hawks have too many options. And you saw that with Bogdan too. Like Trae Young he had some.
I do like that Emmanuel Quigley is going at Trae Young.
I do like that too. I think that actually might be the next best play at playing Trae Young, because I think part of the problem was yesterday and why you saw that parting of the Red Sea. One, poor Frank Ntilikina only went in for like 2 defensive possessions at the end of the first half and at the last play where Trae Young scored. What's up?
I said he got toasted.
He did. He got toasted, but he came in just cold. Like, I felt bad for him. And also Nerlens Noel not being in there because he got hurt. Kind of contributed to that as well. But the Hawks with Trae Young was making great passes to the weak side corner on Bogdan for a few of the clutch threes you were mentioning earlier. DeAndre Hunter hit a few big shots. They just have weapons, man. Now that Hunter's healthy again, Herter is out there, hitting threes at a clip off the bench. Clint Capella, it gives the Hawks a size advantage over the Knicks that can help out with his offensive rebounding and his defensive rebounding. I like the Hawks in this series just because they're more talented. I think the Knicks, the pathway for them to win this series is in 7, because I just think they are just tough and rugged, and they might not score a lot, but they can definitely hold teams and make it a game. But I think part of the reason why the defense was not up to snuff down the stretch was Tibbs is in a conundrum. Do I play Elfrid Payton, who stinks to high heaven, but is kind of a bigger guard and okay defensively? Do I play Frank Ntilikina, who just stinks, but is honestly, he's a better defender than Derrick Rose, Alec Burks, Reggie Bullock, who they ended up those were the 3 guards they ended up closing with. So nobody's going to guard Trae Young in that lineup. So Trae Young got the feast. Emmanuel Quigley might be the best option now that you mentioned him. Like, he might be the best option to go at Trae Young at both ends. Yeah, he looked good, and Toppin looked good for those 12 minutes that he was in. I think he's not going to play any more than that, just because he has had an up and down rookie year that's been marred with injuries too. But Emmanuel quickly he did not look like he was scared of the moment. But just a side note, I loved the Madison Square Garden crowd. They're insane. It was a madhouse in there. The crowd. And it's kind of funny because it makes sense because those two franchises hadn't seen the playoffs in a long time. They were fired up. And it was just good having once the crowd capacity went past 10,000, you're just like, okay, now we're starting to get like to the real crowd level, like crowd status of how many people are in attendance. And both crowds showed out, man. It was awesome. That Hawks Knicks series is going to be awesome to watch. Yeah. I can't wait for the rest of it.
Honestly, the way that series went, or the way game 1 went, I think this could be a very competitive 7-game series.
Oh yeah, it definitely has the possibility for that. I just picked the Hawks in 6 because I think that's the only way the Hawks could win is at home in Atlanta.
I think if they grit and grind this out, I think the Knicks have a very good chance at this.
Yeah.
To me, it's a thing where like if Bogey doesn't come up clutch for a couple of these, like the Knicks kind of win this going away. I think the defensively there's an energy to what they were doing. There's a fire to what they're doing. Even though Randall didn't play very well, like you could see the fire that he had, and he was really getting after it and giving it his best shot. And like it's a Tibbs team, right? So like the energy was so high. Like I love this.
Yeah, series. I don't think Randall's gonna be shooting that poorly again. I thought there were some head scratchers he had on offense, but he did have the effort for sure.
Imagine 5 months ago being like, I don't know if Julius Randle's gonna shoot this poorly again.
Well, imagine yesterday during the broadcast when Alec Burks was hitting a bunch of shots down the stretch, the play-by-play guy was like, Alec Burks is putting the Knicks on his back. Like, I did not think I would ever hear that line. But yeah, like there was that one, the Knicks were up 103-100 with like 55 seconds left. And can't remember if it was Trae Young or somebody else, but they tried to hit Bogdanovich in the corner for a 3, and RJ Barrett actually had his hands on he deflected it, but he was already flying out of bounds. So he took himself out of the play, and Bogdan caught the ball off the ricochet and just launched a 3 and tied the game. It was like, but the moments like that, it was just like, oh, they were so close.
Well, the thing is, that's crazy. If you watch the clip, he launched it like off balance, like you're saying.
I thought RJ fouled him.
Well, dude, he launched it and ran back down the court like, yeah, that's good.
Yeah.
Like, he just took off. He's like, yeah, I know it's in.
Bogdan's a motherfucker, man. Like, he's competitive as shit. Like, yeah, I love watching
there's a level of confidence of like, oh, let's get back on defense, guys. Like, it's like watching Kuroko no Basket and Midorima shoots the shot and he's like, let's get back on defense. Like, it had that feel, right? He just turned and left.
I love a good Kuroko no Basket reference. That was solid.
But that's what it looked like, right?
Yeah, it did. He turned and ran back. And it was I thought RJ fouled him because when he got back in the play, like he went up to contest, but I thought he hit Bogdan's arm and it still went in, like splash. Yeah. And he ran back. And it was like, okay, like, all right, Midorima.
Right? I was like, oh shit. I was like, that's the cockiest thing. And it was, I loved watching that game. That was probably the most fun I had watching any of these games.
Yeah, the Knicks crowd really brought. Spike Lee was like stomping the ground like he was possessed by the Holy Ghost. Like, it was rocking in there, man. It's good. Like, I know I mean, we shouldn't really care about ratings and all that stuff. Like, nobody cares about, like, no, unless you're an executive or whatever, or a business executive. But it's not, there's no denying that the NBA is so much more fun when the Knicks are in the playoff mix. Like, that's just a fact. Like, I'm sorry. I know, yes, big market bias, whatever the hell you want to call it. The NBA is fun more fun, more exponentially fun when the Knicks are quote unquote back. Now they kind of have to do it again next year and the year after that to kind of look back at this Tibbs era, but that crowd was bonkers, and it's MSG. That's royalty. They pulled Mike Breen from what is that network called? Well, the Knicks TV network, they were able to pull Mike Breen away from ESPN so he can broadcast the first game 1 and game 2 on the MSG network with Clyde Frazier because the Knicks are back. That's how special this is.
Yeah.
Like, that crowd was awesome. And the Knicks are a fun, up and coming, plucky team. I do think the Knicks did themselves a disservice not attacking Trae Young on the defensive end more. I wish they would I wish they would let RJ Barrett run stuff more, because it's really, when you look at it, it's really like Derrick Rose, Julius Randle, and some Emmanuel Quickly. And it's not really RJ initiating. He has a winning player's mentality. Like, he's fine in whatever role he's in. He'll spot up and shoot 40% from 3. He'll be big on the defensive end and slide his feet and, play defense. But he has some skills, man. I wish the Knicks would, like, Trae Young would be on RJ Barrett sometimes, and RJ scored. There were a few possessions where RJ scored, but he wouldn't touch the ball again. And it's like, RJ's a good ball handler. Let him take advantage of the mismatch. Like, attack Trae Young more is what I would say for the Knicks.
We could score on Trae Young. Like, Trae Young can't guard anyone, and so like I just don't understand why teams don't go at him more.
Yeah,
like he should be targeted. Like, you should literally have to think, if you're a Hawks coach, like, are we playing? Like, is he worth having on the floor? Like, that's what you, as an offense, that should be your goal, is to make them think like, fuck, we can't keep him out here.
No, the Hawks are never going to take Trae Young.
No,
he's their best player.
No,
but
you know what I'm saying? Like, you want to put
make them think, where can I hide Trae Young? Like, right, like, where the hell can I hide? You want
to really think like, fuck, this is a problem.
Yeah, exactly. And I think the Knicks did themselves a disservice not doing it as much.
100%.
As much as I love Julius Randle, and yes, you got to run your offense through him, I just think RJ Barrett had a really good second year. He's still growing. He's only 21 or 22 years old. Give him some big playoff reps. Let him go at 5'2" Trae Young. I know he's not 5'2", but you get what I'm saying.
He's fucking yeah. There's a big problem with down the line.
And I would think Tibbs, of all coaches, would do that. And I was just kind of surprised they didn't.
Like, the weird thing is that I've noticed with defensive-minded coaches, I don't know if you noticed this too, defensive-minded coaches a lot of times have problems flipping their thinking to offensive like applying their defensive thoughts to offense.
Yeah.
Because you think it'd be as easy as like, oh, defensively, this is a problem that I would have trouble solving for their team. So let's attack them here. No, they just don't think that way. It's their offenses just turn very vanilla. Like, give it to the best guy and let them cook.
Yeah, it's
all the defensive minded coaches do that, and it's like, I don't get it. But
hey, we can't really say anything else bad about Tibbs, or Knicks fans will come at us. He did revive this franchise, but you're right, it's weird. Like, at least simplistically, I would think Tibbs would be a fan of mismatch ball.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, bring this up. I had this conversation the other day, and like, Monty Williams deserves to win Coach of the Year. Yes, absolutely, 100%. You did a great job. Suns are great. Suns are doing a good job. All this stuff. I think Tibbs deserves it more.
I think my top 3 would be Monty, Tibbs, and what's his name? Steve Nash in Brooklyn. Okay. And yes, I know people are going to be like, "Oh, Steve Nash, what? He's coaching like 3 superstars or whatever." Yeah, the big 3 hardly played together, and their role players won a lot of games. Like that to me, like, says a lot more than just simply saying, oh, he has 3 Hall of Fame players on his roster. Yeah. Like, Steve Nash was good. But I think you can make a case for either or. I think both are deserving. I know that sounds like a cop-out answer. I think where Monty Williams gets a lot of credit for me is the fact that, yeah, we can attribute the fact that Chris Paul, was a big part in why the Suns started winning more games. I did not think the Suns would be a top 2 seed, top 5 off or top 10 offense, top 10 defense, and had a legitimate shot to be the 1 seed in the Western Conference. That flip is so drastic. And it's not just Chris Paul. It's the development of DeAndre Ayton, the development of Mikal Bridges. Jay Crowder, yeah, he's in the mix. Cam Johnson in the mix. Cameron Payne revived his NBA career, basically, and is an effective, bench guard. I just think all that development also goes to coaching, and I think it's all added up to where the Suns are right now. So that's where I think Monty has a just as strong of a case to me as Tibbs. With Tibbs, I didn't think the Knicks, and this is probably where Tibbs might have the edge. I did not think the Knicks were going to be a playoff team, and they were a top 4 seed.
I totally get where you're coming from with the Suns. My thing with the Suns is the Suns got Chris Paul, and like that's an additive piece that you can say, and even in the bubble, you can say like, oh look, they're trending upwards. Like they're trending upwards. They're a young team. They have pieces. They have Booker and Ayton, and hey, they get Chris Paul now as a leader. Like, wow, this roster can do something. Where when you look at Tibbs, this is essentially the same roster he had last year. That was trash.
Yeah,
and look at what he's doing with it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Tibbs has he definitely is deserving of Coach of the Year. I'm not denying your argument. I wouldn't be.
That was my big point of like, yes, the Suns have a better record. Yes, the Suns are probably the better team. But look at in terms of pure coaching, look at what the Knicks did last year versus this year with this almost exact same roster. Mm-hmm. Where with the Suns, there were positives that you could point to. There were signs of the climb, and then you throw Chris Paul into the mix. Like, to me, that's more of a like, oh, I can understand or see where this is going. The Knicks thing, the only person I can attribute this to is Tibbs.
Mm-hmm. I just, I think with Monty, you also have to account that I thought the Suns would be like in the 4 to 6 seed range in the Western Conference, and I think sometimes when we talk about, it's almost like the leap from bad to good. We never talk about the leap from good to contender, which I think in some cases is harder to make, even if you add Chris Paul to your team. Yeah. So that's where I think Monty has just as strong of a case. I think the leap, and it's almost like when Steph Curry in 2016 or Giannis last year, they kind of got discredited because whenever they went to the bench, their team was always up like 30 or whatever it is. The leap from good to elite is probably arguably the hardest leap to make, or like from great to historically great. Like those two leaps to me, they're harder than going from bad to good. But with the Knicks, they were awful, and they ended up with home court advantage in the first round. And that is also where I'd say Tibbs probably has as strong of a case as Monty Williams, because that leap was, honestly, it came out of fucking nowhere. It slapped us with a white glove with powder on it. Like, it was, they're both deserving.
The glove and said, "I'm Rick James."
Yeah, I'm Rick James, bitch. Don't get me started on Chappelle stuff. I can imitate my Prince and Rick James. I can imitate Dave Chappelle imitating Rick James and Prince.
Yeah, I think it's. I grew up on that show, so it's like I have weird. We both do. We both have that same kind of age group. I have weird references from that show, and people are just like, "What?" I'm like, "God, don't worry about it."
Yeah, I'm just like, yeah, okay, never mind. Like one of the more underrated like lines from that Prince skit was just like when Charlie Murphy and his crew were playing Prince and the Revolution and pickup ball, and Charlie Murphy was just like, "Prince, can can you turn on the air conditioning, man? It's kind of hot. And then Dave Chappelle,
the lakes of Minnetonka.
Yeah, and then Prince as Dave Chappelle as Prince was like, why don't you purify yourselves in the waters of Lake Minnetonka?
The part that gets me is the fruity picks gets me every time.
Mm-hmm.
And then the dunking with a straight face gets me like and
then he let go of the rim and he was still floating in the air.
Yeah, I bring up Chappelle's all the time, but yeah, kind of getting back on top. Is there any other? All the other games are pretty straightforward. At least from what I remember, like Sixers, Nets.
Yeah, I wasn't really too worried about that one. Shout out to Tobias Harris keeping us in the game with Joel Embiid in foul trouble on some BS calls, honestly.
Yeah, I don't know.
I'm telling you, man, Doc, the playoff coach, the old school playoff coach is looming, and I'm scared because like he's going to mess up on a few big decisions or something like that, where it's just like Dwight Howard is still playing with Ben Simmons in lineups, and those lineups have been terrible all year. Like, for some reason, he thinks challenges carry over into the next game. Like, Doc, it's okay to use a coach's challenge, especially when Joel Embiid's third foul was really an awful call. Like, it was an awful call. Like, and I'm also scared for, Doc is a plan A, don't really have a plan B type of coach. And his plan A is great, but when it doesn't work, what is he going to do? Like, I want to see him get more freaky with lineups. Like, put Ben Simmons at center more. Like, put more shooters around, or, play Tyrese Maxey more over Shake Milton. Like, I don't know. Like, the Sixers they're going to cruise to the conference finals, I think, but it's the conference finals and potentially the finals where, the margin for error gets really small, and I'm afraid Doc is going to be too much for that margin of error. That's just my only thing. But it's a pretty straightforward series. The Sixers should win in 5. If they don't win this series within 5, then I will have some concerns for sure.
Yeah, for sure.
And then Brooklyn, we touched on it for like 10 seconds earlier, but that's straightforward. Like,
yeah, that's a win.
The Celtics gave the Nets all they could handle in the first half. And I know Jason Tatum didn't play like Jason Tatum, but the Celtics need Jason Tatum to score like 45 every single game for them to have a chance to win a game.
Yeah.
So
I'm not worried about anything else, any of these other series, but yeah, we'll see. But we have some really interesting series going on, and I'm excited that we're getting into playoff basketball where we get to talk about these over the course of a couple weeks.
Yeah, all these series are interesting except for the Nets, Celtics, and Sixers, Wizards. We touched on all of them.
Yeah, all the series in the West are interesting, and 2 of the series in the East. So 6 out of 8 is not bad at all.
Oh yeah, we had a lot of good game 1s, man. Like, it's been a while. Maybe it's because, like I said earlier, it's because we didn't have crowds and stuff, and it was a bubble setting. But it just feels good to have this back, and maybe that's why we think it's been a while that we haven't seen this many game 1s, is because we're now coming back to this normal setting, and it's nice.
Yeah, very much so. So yeah, I guess that's it for this week. And I guess we'll talk to you guys next week for games 2 and 3.
And maybe 4 if some people get swept.
Yeah, maybe 4. But yeah, thanks for watching, guys. And we'll talk to you guys next week.
The B.O.B.